Good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to do a webinar on wayfinding. So this is part of our 8-point framework for designing your ideal life. So we'll cover a little bit about what the principle of wayfinding is, what it means, and how to do it. And this is a great topic of, again, the life design as you move forward in your life and find your way. What things to use to measure direction, what things to use to know if you're making progress or not towards designing your ideal life. So with that in mind, we'll get into it. So at Elevation Association, we love the example of mountaineering. We use it a lot in all of our educational material. And again, it's this principle of it's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. There's so many great stories and examples and things you'll learn as you get out in the mountains and explore, trying to elevate your life, trying to get to a higher peak or those kind of things. It's a very good metaphor for improvement and, again, reaching a peak, reaching a goal, those kind of things. So we really embrace that pretty heavily here at Elevation Association. Love this quote by Sir Edmund Hillary, who was one of the first Westerners to climb Mount Everest. It's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. And so that's part of this theme of mountaineering, again, within the name of Elevation Association, that through our association with each other, we elevate one another to improve and be better leaders, better people, and again, accomplish our goals. So at Elevation Association, we have 3 areas of focus. We have life, which is our Everest peak, leadership, which was Mount Fuji, and legacy, which is our Mount Kilimanjaro. And so these are what we call our peak progression plan. Again, these are our 3 areas of focus, and within each of these areas of focus, we have a framework, an 8-step framework that kind of helps outline what it means to summit these peaks. This is our life, Everest. Again, today, our leadership is Fuji, and then today we're going to be working on part of the life design one, which is wayfinding, which is milestone 4 from our life design course. So that's where we'll be spending time today. Again, leadership, we have an 8-step process here for working on your practice to hone your leadership skills, and then legacy, our Kilimanjaro, which is 8-step framework on leaving a lasting legacy. So again, today we're going to be in our life design portion. Again, wayfinding, which is milestone number 4, what it means and how to do that. Just so you're familiar with the 8 steps included in the life design process is milestone 1, starting where you're at. Milestone 2, building your tribe. Milestone 3, building your compass. 4 is wayfinding. Milestone 5 is odyssey journeys. Milestone 6 is prototyping. Milestone 7 is design your dream job. And milestone 8 is choosing happiness. So again, these are compiled into our booklet, Design Your Ideal Life Summit. You can download the booklet in school here as well as part of this course. It has all 8 milestones in here. Again, we're going to be in chapter 4 of wayfinding within the booklet. So there's been a few famous wayfinders throughout history. Lewis and Clark and Columbus are pretty good examples of explorers who didn't necessarily know exactly where they were going and had to find their way as they moved forward. And this is the principle of wayfinding, is not knowing your exact destination, because life can throw a lot of curves at you, but how do we move forward and make progress? So this concept of wayfinding is very in line with kind of these explorers, right? Where they knew a general direction of where they wanted to go, but no one had ever gone there before. No one had ever explored those areas. There wasn't a lot of information available. So they had to kind of use the information that was available as they took each step forward, and then from there find their way. And so this is the concept of wayfinding. In the Disney movie Moana, they talk about wayfinding, and I think it's kind of interesting. Kind of again goes along with this concept of like knowing where you're going from knowing where you've come from, and looking at things to guide you along your way moving forward.
Teach me to sail. My job is to deliver Molly across the great ocean. I should sail.
It's called wayfinding, princess. It's not just sails and knots. It's seeing where you're going in your mind. Knowing where you are by knowing where you've been.
Okay, first, I'm not a princess. I'm the daughter of the chief.
Same difference.
No.
If you wear a dress and you have an animal sidekick, you're a princess. You are not a wayfinder. You will never be a wayfinder. You will never be a wayfinder. Really? Blow dart in my butt cheek.
Again, wayfinding, knowing where you are by knowing where you've been, and again, being an explorer as you move forward. So that's part of the concept today with wayfinding. So some other great wayfinders are Annalie and I. We have implemented this practice of wayfinding as we explore kind of the mountains near our home in Sun Valley, Idaho. We live pretty close to the Sawtooth Range. It's about an hour and a half north here, close to Stanley, Idaho. And we spend most of our weekends in the summer months wayfinding, finding our way through the mountains in the Sawtooth. When we first got into backpacking, we started with standard trails and the marked paths that are throughout the Sawtooth National Forest. There's about 400 miles of trails and different routes you can take. But after a few years, we'd kind of seen most of those trails, been to most of those destinations. And so we started to look for ways where we could get off the beaten path and kind of make our own way and find areas where there weren't a lot of explorers or hikers kind of off the beaten path. And so we implemented this strategy of wayfinding in order to find some beautiful destinations and kind of have pristine, beautiful areas all to ourselves throughout the summer months. And so we kind of incorporated this wayfinding into our backpacking routine, and it's helped us to find some of the most amazing places in the Sawtooth Mountains, and again, places where have hardly seen footprints, and may get one or two visitors a year back in some of these remote areas, but that doesn't see a lot of high traffic or anything like that. So through a combination of using maps and Google Earth and GPS, we're able to get back to some of these areas where, again, they're kind of pristine and untouched. And for us, it's brought a lot of joy and happiness, and exploring these areas. It's kind of the thing we like to do. But wayfinding is all about just kind of navigating the unknown, and using some tools and skills to kind of navigate the terrain, and then just find the best route as you're kind of going. So that again is the principle about what we're talking about today. This is a video from one of our hikes a few years ago. You'll see in the video a lake that's called Lake Catherine, and we're actually hiking in from the backside of Lake Catherine. And our goal here is to get down to the lake, but you'll notice in the video we're actually having to go uphill to try to find a way down to the lake. Again, that's Lake Catherine, and we're trying to get down to the lake, but we're on some cliffs up here. And again, in order to find our way, you kind of gotta, just explore and find the best path forward. So that's kind of part of the wayfinding process. And again, wayfinding, as it pertains to the Design Your Life course, kind of has a few things in mind. There's the compass, which we talk about in chapter 3. How do you create a compass for your life? And then wayfinding's focused on these two areas, engagement and energy. So these are the two gauges that you use to determine whether or not you're going in the right direction towards your compass, right? So we'll get into what engagement is and flow specifically, and then talk about things that bring energy into your life as opposed to things that drain you from energy. So again, these are the two things that you're looking for as you move forward. What things engage you and what things bring energy in as opposed to energy out. So the first topic is engagement. So again, this is kind of a little gauge that we use to rate activities to see whether or not we are engaged. And the highest point of engagement is what's known as flow. When you really get your mind and body into a state of flow is when you're engaged. And we'll go through flow, what that is, kind of the study of flow. And because again, if you can find yourself in flow, you're going to, one, be more engaged in your work. You're going to find more happiness, more contentment. And if you can identify areas that bring high engagement, then you can find more satisfaction in your work. And again, know that you're working in the right areas that bring yourself, fulfillment, because you are finding a state of flow. And when you do find flow, your output incredibly increases. So finding things that bring engagement into your life, finding things that put you in a state of flow can really have a high effect on what you're able to accomplish in your life. So finding these areas is super important to, one, happiness, and two, productivity. It's like being productive in what you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about flow. This is a gentleman named Stephen Kotler. Stephen Kotler's one of the foremost experts on flow in the world. He studies flow. He studies extreme athletes. And we'll get into that a little bit on how they get into a state of flow and how they're able to accomplish some pretty incredible things by tapping into this engagement factor. So some interesting things about Stephen as he kind of got into flow. Stephen had Lyme disease pretty extreme in his younger years and found himself pretty much bedridden and suicidal. And one of the things that kind of got him into the study of flow was that he had a friend that would come and see him when he was really struggling with Lyme disease, and really encouraged him to get out and surf, and finally convinced Stephen to get out of bed and to try to get outside, get some fresh air, and to surf. And what Stephen found is when he would get out and surf, even though it cost him a lot of energy, that the surfing kind of re-energized him, that he was able to kind of tap into a state of flow and where he would begin to feel normal or even better than before. And even though at the end of these, surfing days he was wasted, he wanted to kind of find that flow more often. And so gradually would get out and surf as much as possible. And pretty much flow is what brought him out of this state of disease and depression, was through his friend's encouragement to get out surf and to fall into these states of flow. And so that kind of ignited his passion for studying flow, the benefits of flow state, and kind of how flow has an impact on your health and productivity. And so he's got some great books out there. The Rise of Superman, which is a phenomenal book. He's got some other new books that have just come out about doing the impossible. And he's a really fascinating speaker. Again, does the Flow Genome Project and has some great studies on how to tap into flow, what ignites flow, and then again the benefits of that. So this is a video of his about the Rise of Superman, kind of again the study of flow that they do as they tap into these extreme athletes, and it's pretty interesting. I'll play that.
Flow is technically defined as an optimal state of consciousness. In a simple, very simple definition, flow is a heightened state of decision making. It's near perfect decision making. In action and adventure sports, at the upper edge, the choice is pretty stark. You're really pushing the boundaries of human performance. It's flow or die. We're using the action and adventure sport athletes as case studies, right? We're using their feats as a way to get at the deep science of ultimate human performance. You have to stop and think about this. If we can essentially decode what these guys are doing, we can apply this knowledge across all domains in society. Most people don't actually know what's possible for themselves.
So again, this is the Flow Genome Project, where they take these extreme athletes and study, how do they get into this state of flow, this near perfect decision-making state, heightened state, and then they try to deconstruct that so that we can use it in our work, in our jobs. Like, how do you tap into that state of flow, and then not just as an extreme athlete, but as a dentist, as a business manager, as a husband, what are these things that can bring flow into your life? How do you tap into that as kind of a superpower, right? And so I love this concept of taking these extreme athletes and deconstructing that, and then breaking it down for us normal people on how do we tap into this extremely powerful state of flow that's available to us. So what is flow? Sometimes when people experience flow, they describe it in a few different ways. It's kind of this effortless effort where time seems to stop. You feel like you've been propelled through an activity. Again, time passes quickly. Intuition gets turned up. During flow, frown muscles actually get paralyzed. So it's kind of hard not to smile. Flow combines the 5 most potent neurochemicals in your body. So it makes you produce norepinephrine, dopamine, endorphins, anandamine, and serotonin. So these are the pleasure drugs. So your body's kind of its own pharmacy, and tapping into a state of flow unlocks these neurochemicals, which then, again, heighten awareness, happiness, those kind of things. Productivity during flow goes up 500%. Creativity goes up 700%. Motivation increases 500%. Flow can cut the time of mastery in half, so your ability to learn something, and it's almost perfect decision making. So the more we're able to tap into this amazing state, obviously the happier we are, the more productive we are, and That's why it's so important to acknowledge this. So they've identified 20 different triggers that kind of induce a flow state into existence. So the more you can use these as triggers in your life to induce a state of flow, then they can help with that. So we'll go over kind of these triggers. There's 10 individual triggers and 10 group triggers for flow. The first one is passion and purpose. So passion and being in your purpose can obviously instigate flow. Risk. So obviously with these extreme athletes, anytime there's higher risk, awareness goes up and triggers flow. Novelty, complexity, unpredictability, deep embodiment, having clear goals is kind of an interesting flow trigger, right? Being focused on what you want to accomplish. Challenge compared to your skill ratio. We'll get into this one specifically today a little bit. Creativity and pattern recognition, immediate feedback. So these are individual triggers that you can implement in your life that will induce a state of flow. Some of the group triggers are complete concentration, shared goals, which I think is fantastic when you're working together as a group, shared risk, collaboration, which is one of our core values here at Elevation Association, close listening, autonomy, a sense of control, again being a private practice owner, a entrepreneur, those kind of things can bring a sense of autonomy, blending of egos, familiarity, equal participation, and open communication. These again are group triggers for a state of flow. So if you're finding as you work with a group that you need to introduce more flow triggers, these are good areas to concentrate on. So flow follows focus, the rise of Superman. Today we're going to talk about these 6 different categories here. The 4% rule, M3 equals M minus M, fear is a compass, 359.4, the 10% brain myth, and then rise. So these are some formulas on, and again, the study of flow. So the first one is 4%, the 4% rule, stretch but don't snap. So what they found in these flow studies is they've studied these athletes and got into breaking down and deconstructing what causes flow. One of the main triggers is stretching but not snapping, which means your skills and your challenges, when you find yourself just a little bit outside of your skill, when the challenge is just a little greater than your current skill set, is where flow is found. So it's this 4% beyond your current skill level. So you're kind of at capacity a little bit farther, but you're not extreme where the challenge is too big for your skill set to where you snap, right? So the sweet spot is this 4%. And so if you can consistently push your boundaries, but not to a breaking point, to a stretching point, this is where you'll continue to find flow. And then the good thing is once you kind of gain more mastery, your skill set increases. And so the objective is to continually challenge yourself at that sweet spot, to continually push yourself, but don't break yourself by expectations or the challenge being too far beyond your reach, but to keep yourself engaged and working towards that 4% improvement. And so that 4% improvement over time is going to make a big difference in whatever skill that you're learning. So tapping into that sweet spot over time is going to bring a lot of really good results. So that's the 4% rule. Stretch but don't snap. This next rule is really interesting. It's fascinating. M3 equals M minus M. So what is M3? And what is M minus M in this equation? So M3 is mastery. And mastery, when mastery is studied, it tends to come from these three M's: mothers, musicians, and marshmallows. That's the M3. And basically what it tends to determine is that those who accomplish mastery at a particular skill set or level have kind of these three things in mind or in common. One is that they were nurtured very well as children. So they tended to have good relationships with their parents, a loving mother who nurtured and encouraged them to reach mastery. Musicians is kind of the 10,000 hour rule right here. That dedication to their craft, hitting that 10,000 hour mark, usually created masters. And then marshmallows. Marshmallows comes from the study that they did on kids. You know, they would put marshmallows in front of them and say, you can have one marshmallow now, but if you wait 30 minutes, you can have 3 marshmallows. So the ones that were able to put off the immediate gratification of the one marshmallow in hopes of getting 3. So these were the other characteristic that led to mastery, was being able to postpone immediate gratification. So again, nurturing 10,000 hour mark and being able to postpone that immediate gratification. So what they found when they started studying these extreme athletes was that these rules kind of went out the door. That kind of equal to these three things was this M minus M. Because most extreme athletes, one, have poor childhoods. They do not have nurturing mothers. Most of them have a terrible childhood, in fact. Secondly is that they, very few of them put in the 10,000 hour rule to mastery. They're not about time, consistency over time. And 3, they're all very impulsive. So the marshmallow thing kind of goes away. They're all about immediate gratification, doing things now. Again, no 10,000 hour. And most of them come from childhoods where they were not nurtured. So the M minus M equals mastery minus misery, which means when you're engaged in doing what you love, it compensates for these other things. So you can either gain mastery through these things, or you can bypass that by doing what you love, like really falling in love with these things. So that's why these extreme athletes do so well, is this passion for their craft, and the love that they have for it compensates in a way that's just gets them to mastery much, much quicker. So that's kind of this formula. There's mastery through this, or doing what you love. Mastery minus misery. So again, as we focus on this formula, unless you have this as a background, focusing on what you love to do is what's going to bring more flow into your life. Using fear as a compass. So this was another factor in flow state, was infinite possibilities kind of lie just beyond fear, pain, and the unknown. So if you're using fear as a compass, like doing things that you're afraid of, it's usually beyond this wall of the unknown where infinite possibilities then come into effect. So this is a picture of us on our first attempt at a elevation association experience. So this is the 6 of us. Lindsay's taking the picture here. Jared Marin, Annalie and I, Dan and Lindsay. Lindsay's behind the camera. This was our first attempt at snowshoeing back into a yurt in the Pioneer Mountains and spending a night kind of having a EA experience. So, and it was, this first experience that then led to some fantastic opportunities for us as we established Elevation Association. This is one of the backpacking trips through the Sawtooths, one of our first trips, and then this is our first trip with Dental Legacy Foundation to Africa, where we established the dental clinics over there. Had we not had the courage to kind of, step outside our comfort zone a little bit and create Elevation Association, none of this would have happened. But because we leaned into that fear and that tested those boundaries, some pretty fantastic things have happened for us since then. So using fear as the compass. So if you're scared of something, you probably need to lean into it a little bit more. So the next one's the 359.4. A lot of you are familiar with Roger Bannister. So Roger Bannister is the first person to break the 4-minute mile. So up until then, it was pretty much considered impossible for a human being to break the 4-minute mile. In fact, when Roger Bannister attempted this, they had an ambulance and a hearse at the end of the race because they were pretty sure if he did go below the 4-minute mile, he would die, just because they didn't think it was humanly possible. And so, most of us are familiar with the story. He broke the 4-minute mile. And then the interesting thing since then is once that barrier was broken, now there's been, thousands of people run a sub 4-minute mile, including many high school boys can now run underneath that 4-minute mile. So once the record was broken, the barrier was passed, people's limited beliefs on what's possible then changed. So this is the other area of flow, is that this once barriers are broken, imagination can kind of be unleashed. The next one's the 10% brain myth. So a lot of times when looking at flow, a lot of us have heard this myth that we only use 10% of our brain's capacity. And I don't know if that's a myth or a fact there. But the myth is that when you're in a state of flow, you're tapped into 100% of your brain capacity. And that's kind of where these extraordinary abilities come from. But what they found is the complete opposite. That when you are in a state of flow, your brain actually shuts down to almost 0%. And you're just in this perfect state of decision making, but there's no thought process happening. You're just reacting and responding in the moment with absolutely nothing prohibiting the thought process. So it's not that you're now using 100% of your brain. You're actually using 0% of your brain. And the frontal cortex actually shuts down, the prefrontal cortex. And again, your thought process fades away, and you're just able to focus and not use the brain that way. So that's kind of an interesting one. I love this. The movie's great, Limitless, and kind of tapping into that additional brain capacity. But I love the fact that when you're in a state of flow, the brain actually shuts down, and you're able to just get out of your own way, in a sense, and move forward. And then in the end, it's just rise, making the impossible possible. So that's an important part of flow, is just, again, the mindset of there is nothing impossible. In its own wording, it says I'm possible, right? And again, having that mindset of tackling the impossible. So that is engagement. So that is the first metric that we use to measure wayfinding, is what things bring engagement into my life. Where am I finding a state of flow, and how do I do more of that? So that's the number one gauge, is engagement. The second gauge is energy. What things bring a lot of energy into my life? So we've got these little water bottles here as gauges. Where are you at? What activities that you do on a regular basis bring energy in, and which ones drain energy out? Because this is the other gauge you want to use as you wayfind, is energy. What excites you, what brings you vitality, what energizes you as an individual, and then how do you do more of that, not less, right? So when I went to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, they talked about this concept of working in versus working out. And I love the concept because I love exercise. It's an important part of our lives and what we do. And this concept of sometimes when you work out hard, you're expending a lot of energy, such as weightlifting or running or if you're rucking, those kind of things require a lot of energy expenditure. And then on the backside, your body recovers and becomes stronger because of that. The other thing is incorporating exercises that bring energy in, such as yoga, tai chi, breath work. Those kind of things actually bring energy into your body that then you can use later. So you kind of have this concept of some things require energy, some things bring energy in. And so how do you find a good balance there? And how do you do activities that bring more energy into your life? If you don't go within, you will go without. I love that saying. So, some other ways of tapping into energy is breath work. So being aware of your breathing. Breathing is an interesting dynamic in that it is the only autonomic process in your body that happens without you having to think about it, that you can actually tap into and manipulate. Meaning your circulatory system and some of those other autonomic bodily processes, there's no way of tapping into those. But through breath work, you can do that. So if you're constantly aware of those things, you can hack into how that brings, how you can make your body respond the way you want. So through breath work, you can tap into your nervous system and change your nervous system from fight or flight into rest and recovery. So when you're stressed, high stress levels, you typically go into a fight or flight state. And what you want to bring into your life is more rest and recovery. So there's a few different breathing methods that you can use to tap into that. One's called box breathing, which is probably the easiest and most effective. So you do that just simply by breathing in a box pattern. So you breathe in for 4 seconds. You hold for 4 seconds. You exhale for 4. And you stay empty for 4. So that's the box pattern. If you do this 6 times, you can change your body from a fight or flight to a rest and restore. So breath work's a kind of a simple way of tapping into your autonomic nervous system and controlling it in a way that changes your nervous system response. So if you find yourself extremely stressed at work or having a bad day, take some time to do some box breathing. Again, working through that pattern, at least 6 repetitions can get you from the one state of a nervous system to the other. Fight or flight to rest and restore. Sympathetic to parasympathetic. Meditation and mindfulness. Again, they've done tons of studies, and the body cannot tell the difference between a imagined experience and a lived experience. So if you want to bring more happiness and joy, peace and calmness into your life, working on a meditation practice can do that by, again, as your body experiences those things, it releases dopamine, epinephrine, those kind of chemicals in your body, and you can do that just by imagining yourself in those places. So being able to put your mind in a state of meditation can again tap into a list of benefits. Spiritual practice. Again, having some spirituality in your life, they find, again, brings energy in, and whether that's religion or just some kind of a spiritual practice, yoga, meditation, abundance, the law of attraction, those kind of things, believing in a higher power can bring a lot of peace and happiness into your life. Reflection, self-reflection, journaling, again, is a great practice to bring energy in, to again meditate, to go through the thought process. A couple years ago, I started the process of manifestation journal. So now when I journal as if future things have already come to pass, as a way of journaling, which I find great. Restorative movements, Tai Chi, yoga, again, those are practices that bring energy in. Nutritional support, making sure you're eating healthy, staying hydrated, those kind of things can also be super beneficial. And sleep. Sleep is super important to make sure you're functioning at your optimal health and being able to recover very well. Sleep is super important. It allows your body to, during sleep, there's a process in your body called the lymphatic system that actually it's like the lymphatic system for your brain. It allows yourself to kind of detox and take the trash out every night. But if you don't find yourself in deep sleep, your body can't tap into the benefits that come through those things. Exercise, again, if there was one pill that gave you all the benefits of exercise, it would be the greatest pill on the face of the planet and would be highly marketed, and the benefits that come from exercise are incredible. And again, if it was in a pill form, would be the most popular pill in the world. So how do you take these things and evaluate what things bring engagement into your life and what things bring energy? So this is what's called the journal tool. You can find this in your booklet. And again, you want to take at least 3 weeks worth of your daily activities, and then you want to kind of rate them on where you're spending time, and do these things bring engagement and energy into your life. So as an example, we did an art class today. Felt really great having the opportunity to be creative in a new way. Found it very engaging and brought a lot of energy. Second activity, we had staff meeting today. Staff seemed really unengaged. No one was adding to the conversation. Felt really draining. Low engagement, low energy. Worked out today, set a new goal, running more again. Felt great, working hard, but tried not to go all out on my first run again. And then the last one, had a crazy, interesting case today at work, really challenging, but I love the problem solving and making difference in a patient's life. Very engaging, lots of energy. So this is kind of the wayfinding method. what activities bring engagement and energy into your life, and then going through and identifying what these activities are, and then how do you do more of them, and what activities are life suckers, and how do you either change the way they are. If you've got meeting problems, how do you have better, more effective meetings? Because meetings aren't just something you're going to get rid of, but how do you make them better? And then how do you spend your time, doing things that you really love and that bring energy into your life? So in addition to the daily journal, there's also an engagement tool to identify the areas where you really find engagement. What are the areas that bring you a lot of energy, high energy, low energy? What activities brought flow into your life? And then what are the peak experiences from the time frame that you're working through? So again, you can download this workbook through school and use that. And again, that's part of your homework, is just to go through, take at least 3 weeks of your work life, add in all the activities, work and home, and find areas where, 1, they bring engagement, 2, they bring energy in. So again, this is Wayfinding. If you have any questions, reach out to me. If you need a copy of the book or something, let me know. Again, it's in school. It's there. You can download it in the Design Your Life course class and fill out that paperwork. So again, I encourage you to get out, find things that bring engagement, flow into your life, and that make you happy and bring you energy. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Bye.